All right, so get this. We've got these AI agents, right?
Yeah.
And they're running around the digital world, but they're not just generating text. They're actually like doing things, using tools, making decisions, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
We're talking LLM agents. And today, we're going deep on a custom project that has really caught my eye.
Yeah, it's a fascinating example of how we can take these powerful large language models and actually make them more practical, more useful. This project really gets down to the nitty-gritty, shows you how to actually build one of these LLM agents from scratch.
Exactly. We've got a blog post, and the code itself, it's all up on GitHub. So it's like we're getting a backstage pass to some like cutting-edge AI development. You know how LangChain is kind of like the popular kid in school when it comes to LLM agent frameworks? Well, this project takes some inspiration from LangChain, but it really aims for like simplicity.
Yeah.
Almost like they're saying, hey, anyone can build one of these.
And that's a crucial point. Making this technology more accessible encourages experimentation, more innovation. It's not just for the, big tech companies anymore.
I love that. So let's dive into how this thing actually works. It's all about this thought action observation loop. It's like a mini internal dialogue the agent has. Imagine it's tasked with planning a weekend trip to, say, Austin, Texas. It needs to find cool events, book a hotel, the whole 9 yards.
Right. So first, the agent gets its marching orders in the form of a prompt. And it's not just, plan a trip to Austin. The prompt includes things like the available tools, the date constraints.
Right.
You don't want to do booking events from, last year and any preferences you might have.
So it's like a super detailed to-do list.
Exactly. And just like we would think, okay, where do I even start? The LLM forms a thought. Maybe it thinks, I need to find out what events are happening in Austin this weekend.
And then comes the action part, right?
Yeah.
It's got to actually do something with that thought.
Exactly. Based on its thought, it picks a tool from its toolbox, maybe a tool that can search, event websites or something, and then figures out exactly how to use that tool. So the action input might be a search query like concerts in Austin this weekend.
Okay, got it. So the tool does its thing, searches the web, spits back some results, and that becomes the observations. Like, aha, there's a cool blues festival happening.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Unlike a simple chatbot, the agent doesn't just give you those results and call it a day. It takes that observation, adds it to its memory bank, and forms a new thought. Maybe something like, okay, blues festival sounds cool. Now I need to find a hotel nearby. And then the whole cycle kind of repeats, with each loop building on the last.
So it's like a detective piecing together clues, only in this case, the clues are concert listings and hotel reviews.
Exactly. And that's how it eventually gets to a final answer, a complete trip itinerary in this example. But the real secret sauce is in the prompt itself. It's not just a question. It's very carefully engineered to guide the LLM every step of the way.
Okay, tell me about this prompt engineering wizardry.
Well, one thing that jumped out at me is that the prompt includes today's date.
Yeah.
Seems simple, but there's a clever reason for it. LLMs can sometimes get tripped up by future dates that they find online. So by including today's date, you're basically grounding the LLM in the present.
So it's like you're reminding it, hey, focus on what's happening now.
Exactly. The prompt also lays out the tools very clearly. And it's not just a list. Each tool has a description, explaining what it does.
Okay.
Like a little instruction manual for the LLM.
So the LLM knows, okay, this tool is for booking flights, that one is for finding restaurants. Makes sense. But how do you make sure it picks the right tool for the job?
That's where the explicit listing of tool names comes in. By listing them out, it reinforces the idea that the LLM should only be using one tool at a time. Prevents it from trying to juggle multiple tools at once, which could lead to confusion and errors.
Right, like trying to use a hammer and a screwdriver at the same time. Not very effective.
Exactly. And of course, the user's original question is also, woven into the prompt, setting the stage for the whole operation. But here's where it gets really interesting. The prompt isn't static. It actually evolves with every step the agent takes.
Wait, hold on. The prompt changes as the agent is working.
It does. Every new thought, action, observation, even the results from using the tools, they all get added to the prompt.
Okay.
So it's like a running log of the agent's investigation.
So the prompt becomes this epic tale of the agent's journey. I'm loving this. But what about the tools themselves? They're not some super complex AI programs, are they?
Nope. That's what makes this project so cool. The tools are really just Python classes with a very specific structure. They've got this thing called the use method, which is the code that actually gets executed when the LLM picks that tool.
So when the LM is like, time to use the Find Restaurants tool, it's essentially calling this use method.
Precisely. And whatever that use method spits out, let's say, a list of restaurants near a certain address, that becomes the observation, feeding right back into the loop.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see the whole picture here. But can you give me a real-world example of what one of these tools actually looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the SIRPAPA tool.
SIRPAPA tool. Sounds intriguing. What does it do?
It's the agent's gateway to the internet. Essentially, it lets the agent search Google.
Uh-huh. So whenever the agent needs to do a little research, it pulls out the SIRPAPA tool.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. The code for this tool is surprisingly simple. It takes the agent's search query, that action input we talked about, and uses the SIRP service to send that query off to Google. Then it grabs the search results and feeds them back to the agent as text.
So it's like a super streamlined way of saying, hey, Google, tell me about this.
Exactly. And because the results come back as text, they can be seamlessly woven into that ever-growing prompt, giving the LLM fresh, real-world information to work with.
This is blowing my mind. But hold on, there's got to be a way to prevent the LLM from just making things up, right? Like what's stopping it from hallucinating the results of using these tools?
That is a fantastic question, and it gets to the heart of why this project is so clever. They've built in this really brilliant trick to prevent the LLM from going off the rails and making up observations.
Okay, I'm hooked. What's the trick?
So remember how the LLM generates its thoughts and actions?
Mm-hmm.
Thought, action, action input, observation. That's the rhythm, right?
Yep, it's like the beat of the agent's thinking process.
Well, here's the key. The prompt includes the word observation, and the LLM is explicitly told to stop generating text when it hits that word.
Interesting. So it can plan its move, figure out what info it needs, but it can't actually create the observation itself.
You got it. By stopping the LLM right there, you basically cut off its ability to just make stuff up.
That's genius. So what happens next? If the LLM isn't allowed to generate the observation, where does it come from?
Instead of letting the LLM hallucinate, the chosen tool, in our example, the SIRPAPA tool, is actually executed.
Ah, so the action actually happens in the real world.
Precisely. The actual results from using that tool, the real Google search results in this case, those become the observation, and they get fed right back into the prompt.
So the LLM is forced to base its reasoning on real data, not just stuff it made up.
Exactly. It's like tethering it to reality, preventing it from floating off into a world of, pure fantasy. This is such an important concept in LLM development, and this project really nails it.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. It's not just about generating, cool text anymore. It's about actually getting things done, making real decisions based on real information.
Right. And the implications of that are huge. Think about it. We could have LLMs that are browsing the web, gathering data, even writing code, all while staying grounded in reality, thanks to this clever tool use mechanism.
It's like we're giving these LLMs, hands and eyes to interact with the world. But let's go a bit deeper on that whole grounded in reality part. What's the big deal about preventing the LLM from hallucinating? I mean, sometimes a little creativity is a good thing, right?
That's true in some cases, but when you're dealing with real-world tasks, accuracy and reliability are paramount. Imagine an LLM agent, helping you manage your finances. You wouldn't want it hallucinating transactions or making decisions based on, made-up data.
Oh, yeah, that could be disastrous.
Right.
It's like you want your financial advisor to be grounded in facts, not flights of fancy.
Exactly. Hallucination is a known issue with LLMs, and this project's approach tackles it head-on. By forcing the LLM to use tools and base its reasoning on the actual results, it significantly reduces the risk of those potentially, costly or even dangerous hallucinations.
That's a huge win. It makes the whole system much more trustworthy, which is crucial if we want these LLMs to be truly helpful in the real world.
Absolutely. And the blog post actually dives into some really cool examples of what these agents can do. One that stood out to me was an agent figuring out the best way to get to a specific location using public transportation.
Oh, wow. So like a super-powered navigation app.
Even better, the agent used real-time transit data, compared different routes, factored in walking distances, potential delays, and then recommended the most efficient option.
That's incredible. It's like having a personal travel assistant that knows every bus schedule and subway delay in the city.
Exactly. And it really showcases how this tool-based approach elevates LLMs beyond just generating creative text. They can actually solve complex real-world problems, and that's what makes this technology so exciting.
Yeah. The blog post mentions another example where the agent actually writes a Python script to, like, scrape data from a website. Is that even possible, an LLM writing code?
It is.
Hmm.
Of course, it's important to note that this technology is still in its early stages. The blog post is very upfront about the fact that these agents can, make mistakes or struggle with highly complex tasks.
Right, it's not a magic bullet, but the potential is clearly there. And what I love about this project is that it's open source. Anyone can dive into the code on GitHub and see exactly how it all works.
That's one of the things that makes this project so impactful.
Mhm.
That openness fosters innovation and collaboration. It allows developers to learn from each other, build upon existing work, and push the boundaries of what's possible.
It's like a playground for AI enthusiasts. Who knows what amazing things people will create once they start tinkering with this technology?
The possibilities are truly exciting. It's like handing someone a set of powerful tools and saying, go build something amazing. But it's crucial that as this technology evolves, we keep ethical considerations, top of mind.
Right. We can't just unleash these powerful LLMs into the world without thinking about the potential consequences.
Exactly. For example, we need to ensure that these agents aren't being used to, spread misinformation
Yeah.
or manipulate people. Transparency and accountability are key.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of this technology, but we can't forget about the potential downsides.
Absolutely. And that's why projects like this one, with its open source nature and clear documentation, are so valuable. They allow for a broader conversation about the ethical development and deployment of LLMs. So while the tech itself is fascinating, it's that commitment to ethical considerations that really gives me hope for the future of LLM agents. This reminds me of another interesting point the blog post touched on. It mentioned that one of the challenges in building these agents is figuring out the right balance between giving the LLM autonomy and maintaining control.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Too much autonomy and you risk the agent like going rogue, right?
Yeah.
But too much control and you stifle its ability to learn and adapt.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act. The developers of this project seem to be taking a cautious approach, giving the LLM a good amount of freedom to explore and make decisions, but within, clearly defined boundaries and constraints.
Makes sense. It's kind of like parenting, right? You want to give your kids the space to grow and learn, but you also need to set limits to keep them safe.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the importance of, ongoing research and development in this field. As LLMs become more sophisticated, we need to continuously refine our approaches to control and safety. This is where things like reinforcement learning and human-in-the-loop systems come into play.
Reinforcement learning. Human in the loop. Okay, you're going to have to break those down for me.
Well, reinforcement learning is basically a way of training AI agents by rewarding them for good behavior and penalizing them for bad behavior. It's like, teaching a dog tricks with treats and scolding. In the context of LLM agents, this could mean rewarding an agent for completing tasks accurately and efficiently, while penalizing it for making mistakes or going off track.
So you're shaping the agent's behavior through like a system of rewards and punishments. That's pretty clever.
It is. And it's a powerful technique for aligning AI systems with, human values and goals. But reinforcement learning alone isn't always enough. Sometimes we need a human in the loop to provide guidance and oversight, especially when dealing with complex or sensitive tasks.
Ah, so it's like having a supervisor keeping an eye on things, making sure the agent doesn't go rogue. What would that look like in practice?
There are different approaches. For example, you could have a human, review the agent's actions, provide feedback, correcting any mistakes, or suggesting alternative paths. Or you could have a human make the final decision, with the agent acting as an advisor or assistant, gathering information and presenting different options.
I'm starting to see how these different pieces fit together. It's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we design and deploy these systems responsibly.
You've got it. This deep dive has given us a glimpse into the exciting world of LLM agents, but it's also a reminder that we're still in the early stages of this technological journey.
Yeah.
There's a lot more research and development to be done, and it's crucial that we approach this with a sense of both wonder and caution.
It really does feel like we're at a crossroads with this technology. There's so much potential for good, but we've also got to be mindful of those potential risks.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool, but it needs to be handled carefully with some foresight. It's like, imagine discovering fire for the first time. Incredibly useful, but potentially dangerous if you're not careful.
That's a great analogy, but are there any concrete steps being taken to ensure that these LLMs are developed and used in a safe and beneficial way? We've talked a lot about responsibility and ethics, but is it all just talk or is something actually being done?
Oh, there are definitely things happening. One really exciting development is the emergence of like ethical frameworks and guidelines, specifically for AI development. Organizations like the Partnership on AI and the OECD, they're working to establish best practices and standards for responsible AI development. They're focusing on things like fairness, transparency, accountability, the really important stuff.
So it's not just a free-for-all. There are actual guidelines being put in place.
Absolutely. And a lot of companies, research institutions, they're taking these guidelines seriously. They're integrating them into their development processes. For example, some companies are actually implementing ethics boards specifically to review AI projects and make sure they align with those ethical principles.
That's really encouraging to hear. It sounds like there's a growing awareness of how important these ethical considerations are.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the most positive developments in this whole field. It's not just about building the most powerful AI anymore. It's about building AI that truly serves humanity, AI that makes the world a better place.
That's a great point. It's not enough to just focus on the technical stuff. We need to think about the bigger picture, the social impact of these technologies. And that brings me to another question I had. We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of LLM agents, but what about the potential downsides? What are some of the risks that we need to watch out for?
That's a crucial question. One of the most significant risks is the potential for bias. LLMs are trained on massive data sets of text and code, and if those data sets contain biases, well, the LLM is likely to inherit those biases too.
Right, like if the training data mostly includes examples of male doctors and female nurses, the LLM might learn to associate those professions with gender. And that's just one example.
Exactly. And those biases can have real-world consequences, especially if these LLMs are used in areas like hiring, lending, or even criminal justice. We can't underestimate the potential impact.
So it's not just a theoretical problem, it could have a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. That's why researchers are working so hard to develop techniques to detect and mitigate bias in LLMs. But it's definitely a complex challenge, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
It sounds like we need to be very careful about the data we use to train these LLMs, making sure it's representative of the diversity of human experiences.
You're absolutely right. And that's where the importance of diversity and inclusion in the field of AI specifically comes in. We need diverse teams of developers working on these technologies. And we need to be intentional about the data that's used to train these agents. We have to be mindful of those choices.
That makes a lot of sense. If we only train these agents on data from a small, homogenous group, we risk making those existing biases and inequalities even worse.
Exactly. And that's why this conversation about responsible AI development needs to be broader. It's not just for the tech experts. We need ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, everyday citizens. Everyone needs to be a part of shaping the future of AI.
I love that idea, a truly collaborative approach to AI development where everyone has a voice and a seat at the table.
Exactly. It's about harnessing the power of this technology, but making sure it serves humanity in the best way possible.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. It's clear that these LLM agents have the potential to revolutionize so many aspects of our lives, but we have to be mindful of the risks and proceed with caution. Any final thoughts for our listeners? Any key takeaways you'd like to leave them with?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that LLM agents are a powerful tool, but they're just that, a tool. The way these tools are used, the values they embody, the impact they have on society, it all comes down to the choices we make today. So stay informed, stay engaged, and make sure your voice is heard in shaping the future of AI.
And I couldn't have said it better myself. This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of LLM agents. We've covered so much today, from the technical details to the ethical considerations to the potential impact on society. I wanted to thank you for sharing your insights and expertise with us. And to our listeners, I encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating topic. The links to the blog post and GitHub repository are in the show notes. Don't forget to share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to hear what you think about the future of LLM agents and the role they might play in all our lives. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking those big questions, and remember, the future of AI is in our hands.